Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today, I'm going to be talking about why sex is not all about sex, and not only about sex, and kind of doesn't really have anything to do with sex. And if you are confused, then you need to listen forth. That isn't a phrase. You need to come forth and listen, hark, and listen, or whatever. Before we get to that, please do subscribe. Most recent is on why not to marry somebody who idealizes you. The next one will be on whatever the hell I decide at that moment. And let's just dive right in. So what we're talking about here is when women say that like it's all about sex for men. I had a great podcast in my own estimation about this, about like why it's like insane to say that it's all about sex to your husband who has like children with you and a house with you and vacations with you and deals with your mom and like all this other shit. But we can just you can go back and listen to that one. And, but moving forward, I got the highest views or whatever on a TikTok that I recently did, which said that, and you should be following me on TikTok, by the way. So you should be following me on TikTok because that's where you get a lot of the initial ideas of things that are later going to be coming out on podcasts. So whenever I have an idea, I'll do it on TikTok or something on my social media, which you should be following. And if you ever want to meet with me individually, you know that you could just follow the links, by the way, in the descriptions if you ever want coaching or therapy. Or if you don't want therapy with me, there's plenty of people that work for me that you can have therapy with too. Or you could be with me individually. There's just so many options for other ways to engage with me. So anywho, so the TikTok that I'm talking about said that sex is about intimacy. Like you can't call yourself a loving wife if you never hug or kiss your husband. Like think about it. There's like these women that are like, oh yeah, I'm totally loving. I just don't like sex. I'm not into sex. I had gone through menopause or I nursing. Well, if you're nursing, you don't have to act loving. I mean, I give you a pass. If you're up all night and all day and your body's being used as food, then, and he can't wait the couple months or whatever till you're done or the year until you're done. Not for any sex. Like, I'm not insane. But, like, if your husband is also wanting, like, your full attention while you have a baby under a year old, he's got some shit to work on. So, like, 100%, go back to my post. I have something about why it's totally normal to not want your husband to touch your boobs when you're breastfeeding, not least of which because like you squirt out milk, but whatever, this is an aside. But if it's like that your sex drive is going down because you're in perimenopause or menopause or you're in your 40s, you're older, you're depressed, whatever. Plenty of women are like, my sex drive is down, but I'm still loving. I'm still a loving wife. But I don't give hugs, I don't give kisses, I don't cuddle, I don't ever touch, and I shrink away from even holding hands or back rub or like anything. Like he doesn't see me naked, nothing, but I'm still loving. How? Like how? Like sex is not about penis and vagina intercourse. Like you've been doing that with your husband for so long. You think he still thinks it's that amazing? He doesn't. It's the same shit. Habituation happens for men and women. But why he's still gunning for it so hard isn't because it is some new, novel, amazing experience that is transformative. It's because it's intimacy. Being close and touching another human being is intimacy. And plenty of guys, almost like 90% of the guys that I work with or that anybody works with would calm their ass down and slow their roll about all of their big sexual problems in bed if the woman was more loving on a regular basis, meaning more hugs and kisses and cuddles and touches on the arm when you go past, etc., etc. Would you hire a babysitter who refused to touch your baby? No. Would you hire a babysitter that refused to touch your toddler? No. And if like the first place that your mind goes to is, well, what if my toddler doesn't want to be touched? You're coming at this from an argumentative frame. That's an oppositional frame of mind because most toddlers want to climb on your lap and read a book. They do not want a book read to them across a table, let's say, while they are, separated by the slab of the table. They want to cuddle and hug and they want to touch touch you, your arm and your face probably. I mean, toddlers want to like climb all over you. And if you had a babysitter that was really, really, quote, loving and baked your toddler a lot of cookies and stuff and read them a lot of books, but refused to touch them, and worse, shrank away when the toddler tried to touch them, you would fire that person. And if the next thing you say is my husband isn't a toddler, anybody, how do you act when you are, by the way, sick, sad, triggered, dysregulated? Everybody, when they are not their best self, acts kind of like a toddler, because that's like the basic child brain. That's what they talk about, your inner child, or like your lizard brain. Like that's basically who everybody still is at their core. So if you never get any intimacy at all, then you are going to feel like a toddler, truly. Like you're going to feel not in control of your emotions, really dysregulated, really like you want to have a tantrum all the time because nobody loves you. So, you are not getting loved. And I always bring back, like there's the Reddit, Dead Bedrooms Reddit that a lot of my clients used to tell me about. And so I look at it, I haven't looked at it in a long time. I assume it's still there. But their thing was the other four are like languages, meaning that the only one that's a, quote, love language is physical touch. And it's true, really. It's the only one, as I've said myriad times, that you are not allowed to get from anybody else either, by the way, within monogamy. So while you could get words of affirmation or certainly acts of service, you could pay for all that. You could get it from friends, gifts. You could buy gifts for yourself, or friends can buy you gifts. Your kids get you gifts. What you can't do is have sex with somebody else. You just can't within monogamy. And so it's really not about sex. It's about what sex means. It's about sex being the only sort of physical touch that is only between the two of you as a couple. And it's honestly, what's so interesting is that with avoidant women, and you could refer back to my Avoidant Wives podcast, they will have sex sooner than they will do the other kind of intimacy. So I have men that are getting penis and vagina intercourse, but they don't get kissed on the cheek. They don't get a hug. They don't get any sort of tap on the arm. They don't get cuddling. They don't get holding hands. And they would trade some of the robotic 5-minute penis and vagina intercourse for any sort of other physical touch that indicates some sort of intimacy or closeness, because that's really what sex is the proxy variable for, is closeness and intimacy. I don't know any men that are not sociopaths that would leave their wives if their wife had like a vagina disorder where she could not have sex, as long as there was other intimacy. Just like if a man's penis doesn't work anymore, which happens, when men get older, there are not many women who will leave that man. I mean, you love him, you're going to stay with him, even if he has erectile problems. And a lot of men who have erectile problems, by the way, can't go on Viagra, can't go on Cialis because it interacts with their other medications. It hurts their heart, whatever. And, they are told not to. So then it's just something they can't do. But they could do other forms of physical intimacy, like cuddling. And of course, the man can still give the woman an orgasm if she wants to. And in any other way, go back to my female oral sex on women podcast, and he could do stuff like that. But what happens sometimes in those situations is that the man gets so depressed that he doesn't get an erection anymore, that he just totally stops having sex totally, because it just makes him so depressed, comparing it to what it used to be, which is really similar to when women's sex drives go down. The way that you can have sex and like how not into it you feel, it's depressing in comparison where it used to be. So that's why menopause is the death of sex, and like depression, anxiety, like anything that lowers your sex drive, antidepressants, birth control. I wrote all these out in myriad posts and whatever. Any of these things that decrease female libido, the reason that it's not like the woman never heard of like giving you a blowjob, but it's like doing anything sexual when you have zero sex drive, just like for men, if you have zero erection, it's like depressing. It like makes you feel like dead, like it makes you feel like, ugh, like comparing this to what sex used to be is like depressing, which is why sex can drop off for people that are struggling with drive issues of either gender. But it's less likely to drop off entirely if the couple has a strong foundation of physical touch and physical intimacy outside of sex. So if you have told yourself that you are a loving partner, but you just don't ever touch your partner, and they want you to and they've asked you to, how are you being a loving partner? You're not, okay, like there's like a lot of shit that could happen with sex itself, especially for people as they get a lot older and if they're struggling with disorders like depression and what have you. But, if you completely shrink away from any sort of physical intimacy at all and sex, then what really does distinguish it from a friendship, or not even a friendship, because the person that isn't getting touched would have so much bitterness, so then you don't feel very friendly, he or she doesn't feel very friendly. So the point is that you can't really think about sex as all about sex, because there are a lot of older couples where like they don't have sex because, let's say, the guy doesn't get an erection anymore. Now, this is how it used to go pretty much. I mean, I've been in practice for a kind of a long time, since 2009, and I've worked with couples at all ages, and the older couples that I worked with earlier in my career, they just kind of stopped having sex after the guy lost his erection. It wasn't as much Viagra all over the place and stuff like that. And a lot of the guys that lose their erections also do have heart conditions and things like that, and are frequently advised not to do that. And or the guy just feels like kind of weird doing it. It was new, at that point. So things have changed now. Like every guy, try telling a guy he can't take Viagra. Try telling him it'll kill him with his medication. Most guys aren't going to listen anyway. But it used to be different. And at that point, there was a lot of women who said that sex was totally, completely off the table because the guy couldn't get an erection. These were postmenopausal women usually, so they sometimes didn't care that much. But what they did care about was that frequently then the guys would stop hugging and kissing them too. And I believe that was due to that. It was sad. It's sad to hug and kiss your wife and realize that then you can't have sex with her, right? Because you don't have an erection anymore, especially if a lot of your sexual identity was predicated on that. Just like being good at having intercourse, intercourse was usually the only thing married couples did in many prior generations. So if you didn't do that, if you can't do that anymore because your penis doesn't work, it's like very painful and sad to be like hugging and kissing your wife when you feel like then you can't please her in the way that you ought to be able to. And for many women, it's very similar. Like the sex drive goes down and then you don't want any sort of other touch because it kind of reminds you of everything that's gone with your sex drive. Like there are some women that are relieved to be done with sex. That's like a whole different topic. But there are many women who had a very sexual identity until they got older and then it just went away. And it kind of makes them sad, to try to engage sexually when they don't feel anything even remotely like they used to. It'd be like watching your favorite movie blindfolded. You might as well not watch it. Like that's how you might think. And that isn't good for the relationship or for the partnership, especially if the other person still wants sex, but it's certainly understandable. And if you do have like an inkling from listening to this that this might be how your partner feels, like that they don't want to have sex anymore or touch anymore because they are sad about their diminution in drive, then and they kind of can't help but compare it, and it kind of seems stupid and pointless now because it's so different, which it is. I mean, if you're a woman in the prime of life who has a great sex drive and then after menopause you don't have any, it's sad, and I've worked with many women that say that it kind of is just not, it's just kind of depressing, to have sex at that point when you kind of don't feel anything remotely like what you used to. So people can get over this again, especially not over it like they're going to start having like sex all the fucking time or whatever, but they can get over it to the point of continued intimacy if they have a strong foundation of non-sexual physical touch. Which, again, to bring it back to the whole thing that we're talking about, you cannot be really in a loving partnership unless neither of you has a physical touch love language. And then I guess it's more like a friendship. But if at least one of you does, then you can't just never, ever even hug or kiss or cuddle with your partner and say that you're still loving in other ways, because they don't care. Just like a toddler wouldn't care about how on top of it his babysitter was with like nap schedule and, cutting up apples the right way. If she refused to hug him or hold him on her lap, that would not be thought to be a warm, loving babysitter, and instead would be somebody your toddler would find frustrating and upsetting and wouldn't like. All right, so hopefully this was interesting as a different sort of perspective. That's what I try to do in these, is open up a different way of looking at things. And I will talk to y'all soon. Bye-bye.